Hey, I got a quick word of encouragement and some power tips for people who are battling enemies, critics, skeptics. You know, if you're going after anything in life, you're going to draw opposition. Opposition is an indication that you're moving in the right direction. And so, in other words, when you hit that stage in going after your goal, your dream, pursuing what's in your heart, and you feel like God's put you on earth to accomplish in terms of destiny and purpose, then you're going to have some enemies. If you don't have enemies, you're doing something wrong. So, having enemies is part of the deal. As a believer in Jesus, as a pastor, as a follower of Christ for over 30 years, I can tell you, studying the scriptures, every great man or woman who's accomplished anything has drawn significant enemies, but they've known that they've been called to overcome. So the first power tip I want to give you today is this: know that you've got what it takes. You've been equipped to overcome the opposition. But one of the mistakes we make when opposition, criticism, enemies arise is, if we're not careful, we can make the mistake of making our opposition, our critics, or our enemies our focus. And power tip number one is never focus on your opposition. Never focus on your enemy. Focus on your mission. Focus on the goal, the dream, the passion, the purpose, the things you're going after. You know, as a follower of Jesus, one of the things I love about how he did life when he was walking amongst a bunch of people who really didn't care for him, he had some significant enemies along the way. And one of the master strategies of Jesus was he never made his enemies his focus. He focused on his assignment and the people he was called to serve and lead. He made his mission his focus. He dealt with his enemies when he had to, but he never obsessed over them. When we obsess over our enemies, we give our enemies power over us. So here's what I want to tell you today. You cannot give head space or heart space to the critics, the enemies, or the opposition you're going through. It's uncomfortable, but you can overcome it by pivoting. When you're tempted to get sucked in to being consumed emotionally, mentally, or spiritually by the enemies or opposition or criticism you're encountering, flip that and let it remind you, make it remind you that the opposition is an indication you're moving in the right direction, that the opposition is an indication of the legitimacy of your goal, your destiny, and your dreams. And then remind yourself this: anybody who's ever accomplished anything has drawn criticism. Then power tip number two, don't let any critic or enemy convince you you've lost. Setbacks, curveballs, hindrances, failures, they happen. They don't mean you have failed and that you're not winning. It simply means, catch this, it simply means that you've drawn some heavy fire because of the legitimacy of who you are and what you're moving toward. So don't make your enemies, your critics, or your opposition your focus. Don't give them head space. Don't give them heart space. And then flip the opposition, the criticism, to encouragement, and let it remind you, be intentional about this, remind yourself that it is an indication that you are moving in the right direction. Power tip number three, remind yourself of this truth, biblically and historically. Anybody who's ever accomplished anything incredible, anybody who's ever stepped out of their comfort zone and done amazing things has drawn critics, enemies, and opponents. So remind yourself when you begin to experience that you are in good company. You've got what it takes to succeed. Just refuse to make your enemies, your critics, or your opposition the object of your focus, and you'll power through anything that's coming against you.